Okay, good morning all. I begin by acknowledging the elders and descendants of the Wurundjeri people who have been and are custodians of the land on which this event is taking place. We acknowledge that the land on which we meet was the place of age-old ceremonies, of celebration, initiation, and renewal, and that the local Aboriginal peoples have had and continue to play a unique role in the life of these lands. I welcome anyone here, either physically or virtually today, who is Indigenous. I was drawn to using this form of words as an acknowledgement to country because of the highlighting of celebration and ceremony. And today we meet to celebrate not only the academic life, but also the wonderful human being that we've lost in Richard Brak. Thank you for joining us today, and especially those who are contributing by speaking. I would like to acknowledge the presence of Rachel, and later today, I believe Samuel will be coming to morning tea. We continue to extend our sympathies for your loss. My wife, Catherine, and I first met Richard and Rachel in 1989, when we arrived in Oxford, as they were soon to embark on their journey down under. They were immediately welcoming. Little did I know that only three years later, we would also come to Melbourne. And we continued our friendship, but also started a journey of scientific collaboration that lasted for the rest of Richard's life. Richard was a warm and generous, engaging, infinitely interesting friend and colleague. I truly loved working with him. And today we will hear about works that he inspired and also contributed to. He has made a lasting contribution to our field. He was an inspiration to me with his boundless curiosity and insightful intelligence. He was truly a scholar's scholar. He was also just fun to be around. I'm sure we will hear many things about Richard the person, the mathematician, the physicist. So I've been looking forward to today with much anticipation. Before I hand over to Tony to say a few words, just a couple of housekeeping matters. For those unfamiliar with the building, there are toilets down the corridor, and morning and afternoon tea and lunch will be held in the staff tea room, which is down the corridor and to the left. Finally, I'd like to thank my co-organisers, Tony, Tim and Nathan, for helping make this happen today, and the wonderful office staff, Anna, Sandrine and Kirsten, for their support. Tony, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks very much, Alex, for those lovely words. You've stolen a small amount of my thunder in that I wish to also thank and acknowledge all those people that you have mentioned, the three of you and me who put this program together. I'd particularly like to mention Nathan's contribution, who designed the website and the program, both with a level of design skill that I think even Richard would have approved of. Also, thanks to the office staff that did all the backroom work, Anna Rodway, Sandrine Procacci and Kirsten Hoke, who, as I say, did all the behind the scenes work, and the School of Mathematics and Statistics for providing the morning and afternoon tea. And all these photos that we've seen, both on the website and in the program, special thanks to Mireille Bousquet-Melou, Rachel Brak, Jesper Jacobsen, Max van Rensburg, Thomas Prellberg, Chris Soteros, and Stu Whittington for tracking down photos and sharing them. Now, turning to Richard. Richard, as most of you know, was born in South Africa, in fact, on the 2nd of January, so he would now be 61. He then went to the United Kingdom after his schooling, where he did a BA at Oxford and a PhD at King's College London. He then took a postdoctoral position at Oxford before moving to Melbourne University, as Alex said, in 1989. We inadvertently, apart from our time here, we inadvertently overlapped quite a lot in our careers. in that Richard's PhD work at King's College was with Jeff Joyce. And when I was at King's College, some 20 years previously, I shared an office with Jeff Joyce when I was a postdoc. Then, when Richard held a postdoctoral position at Oxford, he and Rachel lived in a thatched cottage on the grounds of Martin Sykes' property in East Hendred. Martin Sykes was the director of research at King's College in my day and took early retirement when he became dissatisfied with the university system many decades before many of us did. He is still a good friend of mine, even he's in his 90s now. A story about the cottage that Rachel may not know is that some years ago, the local authorities insisted that for safety measures, the old British manufactured metal-clad fuse box in the cottage should be replaced by a modern thermoplastic unit with circuit breakers meeting the latest safety standards. Sykes thought this was ridiculous, but then discovered that the cottage would be uninsurable unless he did so. So he did, and a few months later, this Chinese manufactured fuse box developed a fault, a fire broke out and caused the cottage to burn to such an extent that it had to be demolished. So that, of course, reinforced Sykes's view of modern regulations. Richard had many interests, of course, other than mathematical physics, which we're particularly here to celebrate today. His interest in archaeology meant that when he was a PhD student, he went on a dig where he met Rachel, and the rest, as they say, is history. He had a keen interest in the natural environment. When Stu Whittington, one of Richard's many collaborators from Canada, would visit, Richard would regularly take him to watch Australian birds. On a memorable trip to Canada, Richard, Aleks Owczarek, Andrew Recknitzer and I rented a car in Calgary and drove through the Rockies to Vancouver. I recall on that trip we visited a large glacier. Neither I nor Richard had ever seen a big glacier before, and while I found it interesting, Richard was ecstatic, rolling around in the snow like an excited puppy. He was also able to regale us with all sorts of facts about glaciers that none of us knew. Richard was, of course, a keen photographer, and I recall on that very trip, he bought a new camera in Calgary and was so enthusiastic about its ability that he persuaded me to buy one too. And while I never used mine as effectively as Richard did his, it did improve my photography significantly. Richard, of course, subsequently moved on to much bigger and better cameras with a suite of fancy lenses and took some amazing photos of the natural world. Richard also had wonderful artistic and design skills. This T-shirt is one of his earliest designs. And whenever we had need of a design for a T-shirt, a sweatshirt, a conference poster, or the like, it was always Richard we turned to, who invariably produced a wonderful design. Shortly after Richard's arrival in Melbourne, he and I began a fruitful research collaboration, which grew into a three-way one when Stu Whittington visited from Canada. Subsequently, Aleks Owczarek joined the department, and later Thomas Prellberg, and Richard formed a very effective and productive collaboration, and lifelong collaboration, I should add, with them both. In those early days, Richard was a keen runner, as was my then PhD student, Andrew Conway, and I recall the three of us entered the quite demanding Great Train Race, a hilly 13.5-kilometre race against Puffing Billy through the Dandenongs. It was a salutary experience for me to discover that youth and natural talent were more effective than experience, as both of them beat me. Richard was a core member of the ARC Centre of Excellence for Mathematical Statistics and Complex Systems that came into existence in 2002 and continued for more than a decade. Richard, as Aleks indicated, was a true academic. He was not interested in playing the game and only published when he had something worthwhile to say and never to boost his publications. That same intellectual integrity applied to his lectures. He was not interested in taking over his predecessors' notes and modifying them a little bit. He would instead devote a huge amount of time and energy to devise a completely new course. Over the years, His interests evolved from mathematical physics to algebraic combinatorics, where his artistic and visualization talents made him a skillful developer of bijections between seemingly disparate combinatorial objects. Over many years, he wrote the manuscript of a textbook that would have been a wonderful contribution to the field. I still have a copy of an earlier version that I thought was excellent and ready for publication. But of course, it was never good enough for Richard's high standards, and so regrettably was never finished, at least to the extent that he would declare it finished, which is a great pity. Richard has had a positive impact on the lives of many colleagues and students and will be sorely missed. Today, we are going to hear from a number of them. And I will ask now Tim Garoni to chair the first session and introduce our first speaker. Thank you very much.